Hi, today we will say about hereditary and the relation between heredity and environment, how it plays an important role in the child development. Heredity involves all those physiological and psychological peculiarities which a person inherits from his parents. These are transmitted to us through the genes. Mendel proved the fallacy of this theory by his experiments on the seeds of peas. What is Mendel's experiment? Working with garden pea plants, Mendel found that crosses between parents that differed by one trait produced one offsprings that all express the traits of one parent. Observable traits are referred to as dominant and non-expressed traits are described as recessive. When the offspring in the Mendel's experiment were crossed, self-crossed the F2 offspring exhibited the dominant trait or the recessive trait in the ratio 3:1. Mendel's experiment and the investigation of other scientists proved that the effect of heredity is transferred from one generation to next through the gene. These are the genes inside the chromosomes. The hereditary of the child works through these genes, determining his physiological and some psychological peculiarities. In human beings, every physiological trait has a definite gene corresponding to it. This gene is never found in other because both the parents contribute one gene each. Thus, the person gets a pair of gene from his parents for every physiological sign. This is hereditary. If these two genes are similar, the child inherits that quality. But if the two are dissimilar, it is the dormant of the two genes which give its quality to the child. Remember, you have two copies of each gene that you inherited from your mother and father. Each copy of the gene could be different. For example, one copy may give you blue eyes while another may give you brown. So what color are your eyes if you have both the brown and blue eye version of the eye color gene? Brown. This is where the idea of dominant and recessive comes in. Dominant means that one of the version triumphs the other. In our example here, the brown is dominant over blue. So you end up with brown eyes. The way people write out dominant and recessive traits is the dominant one gets a capital letter and the recessive one a lowercase letter. So for eye color, brown is B and blue is small b. People have two versions of each gene, so you can be like both capital B or capital B small b or small b and capital BB, and also capital B and small b have brown eyes. Small bb, they have blue eyes. Versions of genes are often dominant because the recessive version actually does nothing. In the eye color example, which I told you, the brown version of the gene makes a pigment that turns your eye brown, but the blue version does not make a blue pigment. Instead, it makes no pigment and an eye without pigment is blue. As you can probably guess, if the blue version of the eye color gene made a pigment, then you would get some mix of blue and brown. There are some cases like this for people. One of the easiest way is understanding about hair. There are two hair types genes, curly and straight. If you have two copies of the curly version, you have curly hair. And if you have two copies of the straight version, you have straight hair. What kind of hair do you have if you have a copy of each? Then it is wavy. Each version of these versions contribute something so that you get a mixture of two. You would write this as capital CC is curly and capital SS is straight and capital CS is wavy. Let's see the effect of hereditary on physiological appearance. To study the effects of hereditary on physical appearance, children of many varied races were compared with their parents. From these experiments, it was concluded that it is hereditary which determines physical appearance. But other scientists pointed out that effects of food and environment are by no means negligible. France Boyce collected examples in which Japanese and Jews residing in USA had increased in height and the shapes of their heads had also changed. There is also effect of hereditary on intelligence. So now you must have got an idea about what do you mean by hereditary. Now we will see about environment and how hereditary and environment play a role in the development of a child. Life and environment are in fact correlates. The child may have all kinds of capacities and cannot develop fully without proper environment. The environment start influencing the child since stage of embryo. This influence has been called by Western scholars as social hereditary. Environment has a very significant effect on the child and the man. Starts right from his birth and continues until his very death. The status of the child, youth, and the old man in the family and society is not the same as the result of this difference. A man's personality, roles, temperaments, ways of thinking, inclination, and character is affected. In the same way, the status of the person in places like school, office, occupation, etc., affects his role to a great extent. Environment can be roughly divided into two parts. One is controlled and uncontrolled environment, and two, social and geographical environment. In both the social and geographical environment of man, a part of them is controlled and the other part is not controlled. Both these types of social and geographical environment have profound effect on the individual. Life and environment are in fact correlates. The child may have all kinds of capacities, but they cannot develop fully without proper environment. The environment starts influencing the child's since stage of embryo. This influence has been called by Western scholars as social heredity. Classification of environment. There are three classification. One is natural environment. It includes the natural things that are never influenced by man's intelligence and powers, like air, water, mountain, moon, sun, etc. The second one is social environment. Man is always surrounded by society because he is a social being. This society remains with him from birth to death. The third one is cultural environment. It includes the social rules and regulation, traditions, institutions, customs, etc. This is how the environment affect the child. So what is the relation between hereditary and environment? Hereditary and environment are complementary. There is a relation between the both. Hereditary and environment are actually the two aspects of the same phenomenon. Davis written as very correctly. Terms like hereditary or environment do not refer to anything tangible but to an abstraction. Lysenko has taken an example from nature to explain it. Only wheat will sprout from the seed of wheat, and same applies to mustard. But when the farmers decide to sow wheat, he has in mind all those things which he needs to make that seed sprout and the extent to which he can lay his hands on them. Obviously, the sprouting of the wheat seed and its development depends on both environment and hereditary. Hence, David Abrahamson writes, what the individual can do is decided by hereditary, and what he does is determined by the environment. The energies of the individual are in the hereditary, but it is up to the environment to extract these energies. Lumsey has beautifully described this relation between hereditary and environment. He wrote, it is not hereditary or environment, but hereditary and environment. Improvement in environment. Education itself is an environment through which child's physical, mental, social, and emotional development takes place. The child, while he receives education in the school, gets completely influenced by his home as well as his fellow students and the society at large. If all the aspects of true education are being used in the proper manner in the school, but the external environment is defective, then the education cannot be successful. In order to give him proper and successful education, it is essential to plan the whole environment properly. Home is the first school of the child and he receives the maximum influence from it. It is therefore necessary to improve the environment at home. There should be affectionate, simple, and peaceful environment so that the child may take his proper development under the shade of his elders. Those children who have lost their parents and could not get their affection always suffer from some defect or the other throughout their whole life. Tucker and Page had said very correctly that every phenomena of life are the product of both. Each determines the character of the individual. Neither can ever be eliminated nor can ever be isolated. Experiments relating to hereditary have proved that it is not the sole factor which determines development of personality of human beings. And similarly, experiments conducted in the field of environment also indicate that it is not the only factor influencing personality. In Attenborough's words, each trait requires both hereditary and environment for its development. There are few things UNESCO has given as a suggestion for the improvement of environment at home and school. First, psychological needs of the children should be fulfilled in homes so that their personality may be clearly be developed and the idea of world citizenship may be created in them. 2. There should be guardian teacher association, children welfare centers, children centers, and they should explain the psychological needs of the parents. 3. The child should be provided with the facility of play so that his mental and emotional development may be possible. If the environment at home is not good, children should be lodged in boarding houses. Arrangements should be made for play therapy, guidance, and mental treatment if the child is patient of any mental disease. If there is any natural quarrel in the family, they must be found out and removed. Property trained and psychology knowing teachers should be appointed in the schools. Children should be given suitable lecture to read and according to their age. There should also be good arrangement for films and radio programs for the children. Proper attention should be paid to the organization of the school. So now you must have got an idea about hereditary and environment, what are the relationship between the two and how it plays an important role in the child's overall development both physically and emotionally. Thank you.